I think I'm okay. Everything looks good. Should get my sugar out of the way. What's up, everybody? I hope you can hear it. Yes, the audio's looking good. What's up, everybody? Hold on. Today is not a good day. Today is rough. I will say right now, it is rough. I'm having a rough day. But I'm here. I want to be here. And, I'm just having a little bit of one of those days where brain's not working properly and all that kind of stuff. But it's fine. We're good. I'm in good spirits overall. Can't wait to cook. As you can tell, today's stream is about Celiac Awareness Month, which is great because it also overlaps with Asian Heritage Month. And I think the reason why it's so great that it overlaps is because there's just a bunch of like gluten-free recipes in Asian culinary, Asian cuisine. I told you already it's not a good day. Oh, that's rough. I will first and foremost start off by saying this. I am not an expert at celiac disease. I am not a celiac disease specialist when it comes to nutrition and dietetics. I think there are other dietitians that do it much, much better. Actually, I know there are other dietitians that do it much, much better than me. I'm just sharing what I know and what I have practiced in the past about celiac awareness or celiac disease management within sport. Because many of you might already know that like I am a sports dietitian specialist. But the challenge with that is that like there's not a lot of celiac disease specialists that also specialize in sport. So what's fundamentally a lot easier, in my opinion, is that someone that's trained in sports nutrition actually learns about celiac disease and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we're here to do. So the disclaimer here, ultimately, as always, this is not personalized health advice. All right? Be cool, be chill, just like act like you've been here before. I do encourage questions in chat. I do encourage like asking everything that you possibly can, because it's just it's a good way to find out what you're into and all that kind of stuff. But I am not a celiac awareness specialist. I'm just like, hey, this overlaps right now, so let's farm content. Because I will be honest, a little bit not feeling great today. Lately have not been sleeping very, very well. So that's probably what's up. There's also like, I wouldn't say there's personal stuff going on at all, but like, there's always something a little bit. Yay, ADHD. But I'm not sleeping well right now. So I'm going to try to do this as, again, not a celiac disease awareness specialist or anything like that, or celiac dietitian, but as a dietitian that knows a lot about sport. I should say not a lot, just specializes in sport, and have taken on quite a few celiac disease clients in my day. Now, I will say the whole gluten-free thing has died down quite a bit in terms of its popularity. This has me having mixed feelings, right? When gluten-free stuff was like at the height of its popularity, there was a lot of support for it, and a lot of companies that were making a lot of food products and all that kind of stuff, and they were getting quite creative. The challenge is that it's like most kind of health fads, a lot of people slowly realized that they weren't gluten-free, and started eating gluten again and all that kind of stuff, which is great because now restaurants will take them seriously if they're like, hey, I'm celiac. Because I will be perfectly honest, when these health fads go serious, when they get popular and like professional kitchens see the health trend and the request on your order, it's just, they will be like, they just roll their eyes a little bit, which is just the reality of the situation. But for the most part right now, I'm going to be doing some cooking tonight. What we're going to be cooking is JAPCHAE. JAPCHAE, and again, I feel like imposter syndrome today. Like this, I've got my anxiety pretty high up today. The reason why is because I'm not Korean. I am Chinese, and what's worse is I'm a Chinese guy that was born in Canada. So how Chinese am I? Doesn't really matter. That's for me and my therapist to figure out. But I am cooking a Korean dish today. Why? I'll tell you why. Because it's none of your business. That's why. No. I just love that joke so much. I am cooking JAPCHAE today because it's one of my favorite dishes, and I genuinely love the sweet potato noodles that they have. They're so incredibly good. It's such a wonderful dish, and personally to me, it's easier to go gluten-free when conceptually you know you're not actually replacing too many ingredients that have gluten in them. So for example, like gluten-free breads, I don't think work. I think there are good gluten-free breads out there, but I don't think as a whole gluten-free breads work. And the reason why is because what is gluten, first and foremost? Gluten is the protein found in wheat. What it does is it provides that structure in wheat products that gives it that springiness. So you know how like when a normal loaf of bread with wheat and gluten and all that kind of stuff is made, there's that springiness, right? Generally speaking, if you don't squash it, but if you like tap it down a little bit, it'll bounce back up. That doesn't happen with gluten-free bread. And the reason why is because gluten-free bread removes the gluten out there, and that gluten performs like this cross matrix kind of effect that's going on in the bread, and that holds up a lot of the air, it holds up a lot of the carbohydrates, it gives it structure. Fundamentally it gives it structure. That's why like gluten-free breads for the most part deflate quite easily. They don't hold the structure for very, very long, and they don't store very, very well for these reasons, because the gluten not being there allows for everything to just like squash down immediately. So that's why like there are a lot of gluten-free bakers out there, and I've tried a lot of good gluten-free breads. I just can't see myself paying $20 for a good gluten-free bread, because unfortunately, like, I've had some great gluten-free breads in my time, and products in my time. Just out of curiosity, I want to try it out. But the majority of them that are accessible from a financial standpoint to the general population are quite pricey. Like the best gluten-free bread I've ever had one time, this one loaf was like $30 a loaf. That's ridiculous. I ain't paying $30 for a loaf of bread, even if I do have celiac disease, and I can't, possibly justify recommending that in this current day and age because of how expensive everything is right now from a financial standpoint. So I thought, let's cook JAPCHAE, because JAPCHAE is not only one of my favorite dishes of all time in Korean cuisine, but it is also, for the most part, gluten-free. We will make one ingredient substitution, which is not that big a deal in my opinion, but we will make one change. The reason why I think it's easier to go gluten-free when the majority of the ingredients aren't being replaced out. So for example, like the bread kind of example I just gave you, if we were to have rice dishes, for example, that naturally just don't have wheat in them, it's great. Because that's what it's supposed to taste like. That's what it's supposed to be. And one of the things I highlight to clients all the time is there's a lot of Asian foods in particular that are just naturally gluten-free. When we think of anything that is rice noodle based, when you think things that are rice based and all that kind of stuff, it's naturally a lot easier to go gluten-free. And one of the funny things is, generally as a rule of thumb, I highlight this from a cultural standpoint of, if your culture is closer to the equator, generally speaking, there's a lot less gluten in those diets. So for example, like Thai, Vietnamese, all that kind of stuff, there's a lot less gluten just because wheat doesn't grow very, very well there, as well as rice does, right? So rice flours, rice-based products, rice noodles, all that kind of stuff, they work out really, really well. Similarly, if we're talking about a North American cuisine, I'm like, yeah, let's talk about rice, but also let's talk about potato-based dishes and all that kind of stuff, because again, it's easier to go gluten-free when you know you're not making a substitution in the dish. You will receive it a lot better. Doesn't mean that you can't have good gluten-free, for example, pasta, but generally speaking, you just don't have the same texture, right? Gluten-free pasta, in my opinion, and in my experience, for the most part, if you overboil it, if you overcook it, you can't make it al dente. You just can't. And B, it turns to mush really, really quickly. So it's really hard to have a gluten-free pasta that works really, really well. But it's very, very easy to have rice noodles, because they're naturally gluten-free, work really, really well. It's just the challenge is rice noodles with tomato sauce. That ain't it. So hopefully next week I get to cook pad thai for you all, because I'm kind of craving pad thai as well, but I'm craving more japchae tonight. And one of the biggest things is the goal of this is to cook while I'm talking about sports nutrition and like health stuff. But ultimately, I gotta eat this dinner, so I'm not about to go and cook like gluten-free pasta. I'm not gonna do that. Yes, I'm being a snob, but that's because I don't have gluten, like celiac disease or gluten intolerance allergies. What is the difference for the most part? So celiac disease is a legitimate disease that can be diagnosed and all that kind of stuff. And for the most part, what it does is it causes massive levels of negative inflammation going on in the digestive system. This is important because the way the digestive system works for the small intestine is it has this is like a good example, but if anyone's seen like the Dune popcorn thing that went viral for let's say rated R reasons, when Dune 2 was coming out, like that Dune popcorn bucket, what was happening was people were, it looks like that. That's what the inside of your digestive system looks like. It's like these finger-like projections that we call villi, and that increase the surface area to help you absorb everything. And on those villi, those finger-like projections, are smaller finger-like projections. So it's like microvilli. And what really, really happens is when you have constant inflammatory issues at the digestive system, like celiac disease or other kind of inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's, that ends up causing so much damage that those finger-like projections that absorb everything, they actually start to retract and the inner small intestine becomes smooth. That ain't good. When your intestine, the inside of your small intestine is smooth like that, instead of like finger-like projections like that, what ends up happening is you don't absorb nutrients properly because there's just not enough surface area to do it. And what ends up happening is you have a lot of digestive issues, a lot of like bloating, a lot of gas, a lot of diarrhea, a lot of just like upset issues. Now, the reason why this is important, especially from a sports nutrition standpoint, is that if you have celiac disease, it actually impacts you 4 times more than if you were to just have regular celiac disease without being an athlete or without being sports. Now, the reason why is because when you're an athlete, your protein rate turnover is much, much higher. You need more protein. You need to absorb everything. Your body needs constant nutrition, right? If it's not getting that and you're eating, assuming that you're absorbing everything, it's frustrating because what ends up happening is you start, you don't do well with your sport. You don't do well with your nutrition or anything like that. It causes other health issues like not sleeping well, like me, like your boy right now. And it causes ultimate shifts in terms of your performance. So, for example, you start losing weight, you start having cramps, you don't digest things well, you have digestive issues, and depending on the sport, that's a huge inconvenience. So, so a lot of these things are very, very important because, again, the athletes with celiac disease feel the symptoms 4 times as fast as the general population and 18 times as worse based on the study I looked at before getting on here. Again, not a gluten-free expert, just a guy with a camera and the need to eat dinner. So what we're going to do is talk about some strategies today on how to manage celiac disease and why it's so important for athletes. And if you're an athlete with celiac disease, how to start looking at food a little bit differently so that you can manage it, so you can be better at your sport and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's what celiac disease ultimately is. It is genetic to a big part, I believe. Can't remember. Don't quote me on that. Please don't quote me on that. But it is a thing that happens. Now, one of the biggest things I will say as a sports dietitian that's been practicing for about 10 years is I get a lot of people coming into my office talking about digestive issues and gut health in general. Because A, it's trending, it's popular, good, happy people are paying attention to their health and their nutrition. But because people largely eliminate gluten because way back when gluten-free diets and celiac disease was like the trending thing, I will say, that, you know, everyone just bandwagoned and hopped on. And a lot of people really were like, I feel 10 times better without gluten. I'm like, all right, cool. That makes sense if you're not having something that's constantly causing the insides to feel crappy. But the challenge is, in my experience coming, like counseling and all that kind of stuff, very rarely do people actually have celiac disease or gluten intolerance. What I typically find after doing a full assessment is that they just have not been eating properly for like a prolonged extended period of time. So what ends up happening is their protein status in their body starts to decline over time, and they have a lot of issues with their digestive system in particular, because the digestive system is largely muscle, right? Your organ systems are largely muscle. So what ends up happening is the weaker your muscles get, aka your organs, the worse they typically function. The worse they typically function, the more foods cause digestive issues. Gluten being one of those foods. But there are also other foods that just, like, you know, people just naturally cut out over time, and they don't realize that they're intolerant to them or that there's any kind of issue. Some common foods end up being like garlic and onion and all that kind of stuff, and some sugar sweeteners and some sugars in general. These are called FODMAPs. We'll talk about that another day. What a FODMAP is fructose oligo di mono and polyol saccharide. Those are legitimate like sensitivities that, for better or worse, there's like no rhyme or reason. But gluten is a big FODMAP. So whether or not someone needs to avoid gluten, which again is that protein found in wheat, for celiac disease issues, or if they're gluten sensitive, I start asking about other foods and all that kind of stuff, like the onions, like the garlic, like cabbage and all that kind of stuff, to see if those react as well. Because if those react, then it's a different treatment plan. It's not just all about eliminating gluten. It's more about, okay, are we eliminating the right foods? Are we understanding the circumstance which you would have digestive issues? Because for women, for example, women that menstruate, there's 1 week of the month, usually just minimum 1 week, minimum being the operative word, where just nothing sits well in their digestive system. So if during this period of time, see what I did there? If during this period of time, nothing's sitting well in your digestive system and you eliminate gluten, are you over restricting things, right? Because that's the concern I usually have with a lot of people that come in being like, this is my dietary allergies and this is what I cannot tolerate. And I'm just like, I'm not sure that that's accurate. I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not arguing whether or not someone feels better without eating those kind of foods. I'm just saying, are we sure that your digestive system is working properly to begin with? Are we sure that you're in a good health hormonal status? And I'm going to have to release a video on how to self-check your nutritional status at some point in time, and what different things to consider, like stress levels and all that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, when we get to that, when I do an assessment for someone with celiac or claims to have gluten sensitivity, I always check what else they've eliminated too, because of course that is important, right? I don't want people unnecessarily restricting things out of their diet unless they have to, because let's be perfectly honest here. If you don't have celiac disease and you can tolerate regular pasta and gluten as long as your health status is improved, why would we not do that? Why are we cutting out pasta? Why are we doing that kind of stuff? But today, Celiac Awareness Month, which is May, overlapping with Asian Heritage Month, is a great way of being like, yo, there are people out there legitimately that have this disease, and this disease makes it hell for your digestive system if you have a little bit of wheat. So, even as a thickener. So, we are cooking JAPCHAE today, and what JAPCHAE is potato vermicelli noodles. I'm covering up the logo because we're boycotting this particular company right now. If you know, you know. But these are potato noodles. There's no wheat in them whatsoever. It's just potato starch that they formed into vermicelli noodles. So this is really, really good stuff. Some of my favorite kind of noodles in together. And it's a dish that works really, really well cold. And I think that's a really, really cool thing, because there's not a lot of dishes, especially Asian dishes, that work cold. Korea has a lot of cold dishes, and I think that's really, really great because it gets hot. It gets really, really hot. As much as I love soup noodles, like ramen and wonton noodle soup and all that kind of stuff, eating that on a hot day is sucky. It sucks. I don't like it. So having options of like cold foods to eat on like a hot day is actually really, really nice, and it's kind of refreshing. So we're making that today. So the noodles themselves are potato starch. However, the one ingredient swap that we're making today is something called tamari. The reason why is because, little known fact, soy sauce actually does have wheat in it. So if you're gluten-free or gluten-sensitive, or you have to cut that out, tamari gives you all the flavor of soy sauce without any of the pain of the wheat in soy sauce. So this is the only swap. It's a minimal swap, and this is why, Asian cuisines kind of work out really, really well in a gluten kind of free environment, because for the most part, they're very, very easy swaps, because there's a ton of options that already don't have gluten. Foundationally, at the end of the day, I think it's 10 times easier to eat foods that naturally don't have gluten in them rather than swapping them out for gluten-free versions of that food. That's just my opinion, but generally speaking, that's what works. And because I know Asian cuisine very, very well, there's a lot of Asian dishes that just don't have to make substitutions in general. The funny thing is, last week I made sushi for y'all, and that I realized, I'm like, oh yeah, this doesn't have gluten in it. So like, sushi doesn't have gluten in it, unless you're talking about the soy sauce. Obviously, the soy sauce it's packed with gluten. But for the most part, sushi itself, if you were to have tamari, it doesn't have gluten in it, so you're good. So that's what we're doing. I don't have beef. I have a lot of pork. So we're going to use pork instead. Like I said, not Korean. I'm not doing a traditional japchae. I'm doing Ben's japchae, where it's like, oh, okay, cool. He is making some swaps. That makes sense. Whatever. But from what I understand with japchae, you can make it with pork as well as beef. Beef is preferred because it just tastes awesome. As well as freaking chicken. You can make it with chicken as well. Or you can make it vegan with tofu. You can do all that kind of stuff. But I'm using pork because I have pork, a lot of it that I need to use. And that's what we're doing today. So let's go. First thing we're going to do is marinate the beef for a little bit. Let that sit. Not too long, but we're just going to marinate the pork, just a little bit, so that we can, by the time we're ready to start stir frying and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be ready for us. So This is my giant tube of pork. Got it from Costco. By the way, there is a sale right now if you're in the GTA area that I saw, where this tube right now is $10. That's friggin' amazing, because that is, right now, this is 6.6 pounds of pork, of lean ground pork. Lean ground pork. That's awesome. That's really, really good. So, and it works for a lot of dishes that use stir fry and ground meats and all that kind of stuff. I'm not using the whole tube because that'd be crazy, but I am using a significant portion of it. So we're going to use a big old metal mixing bowl. Just going to do one of these and just plop this in. Now this has a little bit of ice in it, which sucks because, you know, I was defrosting it today. Whatever. Like I said, not at my best right now, but that's okay. We're not always having to try to be. And that's important. So I'm going to use, I guess, half of this. This is probably like 3 pounds of beef and all that kind of stuff. Pork. Oh, God, I see ground meats and I always think beef. But it's about 3 pounds of pork. And what I'm going to do is just twist it back up, put it back in this, like, bag that came with it, and put it back in the freezer so that it won't go bad. Because you know, right? Like, your boy is being mindful of food waste, but also of financial waste. Because you have to throw away food, you're throwing away money, right? So, back in the fridge you go. We got our pork. So, this is going to be a little bit crazy because I don't do a lot of measurements, and that might drive people insane. It is what it is. Okay, so I'm taking, boom, sesame oil. We're going to take the tamari and just basically mix that up with a little bit of sugar. And we're just going to go boom. Now, if I was to measure this out, it would be like 3 tablespoons. But it is what it is. So one thing I will say is that tamari is, I believe, slightly sweeter. Just slightly. Not that much, but it's slightly sweeter. So we're not going to add that much sugar in it. But we are going to add a little bit of sugar in. Where's my sugar, bro? Where did my sugar... Oh, there it is. It's behind my other sugar, which is my Dr. Pepper. Okay, there's that. Just going to put a little bit of ground black pepper in it. What we're going to do is mix this around real good and let it marinate and sit for a little bit of time before we start like stir frying everything up and then also cooking the noodles. So I'm just taking the beef, pork, and mixing that all up. And you know what? Might as well say hi to everyone right now. How's everyone doing today? I hope everyone's day is better than mine right now. Again, I'm not having a bad day per se, but I am just being like, I didn't sleep too well last night. I got a ton of work to do still. I got to send some client reports off and all that kind of stuff. But I had to get on stream like ASAP. So, you know, it's a challenge because I'm still getting used to this, but yay for me. And this is just me being like, you know, giving myself the affirmations that other people get from me and all that kind of stuff. To be like, yay, you're being consistent. You're streaming regularly like you said you would. You're not letting ADHD win. You're not letting your procrastination win. All that kind of crap. So that's what we're doing. That's what I'm proud of today of myself. But we're just mixing this up. We're going to let it sit for a little bit of time. I think it needs a little bit more tamari, to be perfectly honest. And while that's sitting up, we're just going to chop the vegetables and all that kind of stuff. And get the water boiling for the noodles, which again are potato starch, which have this amazing like chewy texture to it. And I think that's important. That's why I love this dish so much, that it's gluten-free. Because of the fact that, you know, like I said before, gluten provides a structural component of most baked goods, right? And most wheat-based products. If you have a gluten-free, oh God, I don't want to say cupcake, but yeah, let's say cupcake. What happens, it just deflates really quickly if it's given to any kind of pressure. Basically, Gluten will fold immediately if being questioned. It is a snitch. Don't quote me on that. So we're just going to do this real quick. We're going to mix it up. All right. We also need some garlic in here. So I'm going to get that in a little bit. And remember, if you have garlic sensitivities, just omit this. But like, you know, I'm not going to admit it because it's delicious. And it's going to work really, really well. And we're just going to mix that up and work well. Okay, so let me get the garlic and start chopping stuff. So, here's some good garlic. Nope, that's not good garlic. Oh, there's some good garlic. Okay. Boom, garlic. Boom, knife. I'm doing 4 cloves, 5 cloves, 5 things of garlic. Now, I will say, traditionally speaking, japchae is a special dish, from what I understand from Korean culture. It's made for special occasions, but to be perfectly honest, nowadays, I'm sure it's still being eaten on special occasions, but it's not so much reserved for special occasions anymore. You know, if that makes sense. So, like for example, there are Chinese dishes that are 100% like you can have them, but it's weird that you would. So when this comes like every single day, like a regular dish item, like the thing that comes to mind is, for example, the red eggs. If you've been to a Chinese banquet and all that kind of stuff, the red eggs symbolize fertility and joy and all that kind of stuff, and probably money too, if we're being honest. Because you know the Chinese culture be. That would be weird for you to eat every single day, because it's like, wait, what? That's a celebration kind of thing. It's like, why are you eating birthday cake every single day? You can have cake every single day. Not recommending people do that, but eating birthday cake every single day, like getting specifically a cake that says happy birthday and eating that every single day, what would that be for, right? So japchae originally I think was one of those dishes. Now if I'm correct, and if it's got anything to do with Chinese culture, it's probably a dish that gets served on your birthday or like a big celebration, something like that. Definitely a big celebration. But you know, nowadays it's just very common. It's a very common dish, from what I understand. Again, I'm not Korean. Don't hold me to any of this. I'm just a guy that lives in the Korean area, that loves Korean food, and is also very aware of the fact that, like, I don't know which, like, research paper recently said that cooking Korean food is, like, the most inexpensive way to cook and healthiest. So that's why I like a lot of Korean foods right now. They're tasty, they're delicious, but they're not as expensive. They're not as hard on the wallet. And I think that's an important thing to highlight, realistically, to talk about, because, you know, times are tough for a lot of people right now. I know a lot of my clients are struggling. They're asking for a little bit more support, which is like, you know, this series too and all that kind of stuff, to be like, hey, here's how you can get a little bit more nutrition in your lifestyle and all that kind of stuff in a more accessible way. Again, this has always been about that. It's always been about making sure that people have the ability to reach nutrition kind of stuff. So let's see, there's nothing in chat right now. That's fine. I'm hoping one of these days that a lot of people like click in and like there's a ton of stuff going on with chat. But for now, I get it. People are shy. People, you know, all that kind of stuff would rather watch the rewatch or have me on mute probably. But yeah, so we got the garlic. So this marinade right now for the pork is a combination of tamari, sesame oil, a little bit of sugar, and garlic. We're just going to let that sit for a little bit, let that absorb a lot of the flavors in, because now I'm going to cook or start chopping up and prepping up the vegetables, right? Vegetables are important. So what we're going to do is spinach. Don't have to necessarily chop that up. But we do have... Ugh. I'm just going to break this out. Okay. Here are the vegetables we're using. We have mushrooms, bell pepper, carrot, and onion. That's what we're using. We're just going to stir fry that up real quick and then do the meat and all that kind of stuff. I will say a lot of these vegetables, for example, bell pepper is a lot less about nutrition, technically speaking, and more about the color of the dish. So I'm gonna put that back in there. We're gonna chop these up a little bit, and we're gonna do carrot things, right? So carrot, we're just gonna peel this real quick. How's everyone doing right now? You know, how's everyone feeling? Because I will say one of the things that has got me this is probably one of the reasons why I haven't been sleeping so well is the basketball playoffs, NBA playoffs have been wild this year. I'm loving every moment of it. The series I'm looking forward to most, which is happening right now, is Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The reason why is because I think the Timberwolves are an amazing young team that has a lot of potential with Anthony Edwards. And by the way, I cannot wait to start buying the shoes that he has put out, the AE ones. They look beautiful. So I need to buy a pair of those real fast because I want to start hooping. But Ant-Man has been on a tear. He's been so good. And I love hearing him talk in interviews and all that kind of stuff. How amazing he is. He's great. He's such a great player. One of my favorite new young players. So I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, Denver in general. You got Jamal Murray. You got friggin' the Joker, Jokic. They're facing off right now. And I will say, the Timberwolves are making the Nuggets look stupid. And that is something that I didn't think was going to happen. I really, really didn't. I thought it was going to be a lot closer. But right now, like a lot of the ESPN and analysts and all that kind of stuff, they're really like, hey, the Timberwolves might actually sweep Denver. Because Denver's not playing to their best ability right now against the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves have a lot of size. They got Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year. Wild stuff going on right now. And oh my god, it's the greatest thing too. Like if any of you watch game 2 of that series, defense wins championships, and that is exactly what the Timberwolves have been bringing to the table. Like I kind of get why the regular season people are like, hey, we're not playing that much defense. But in the off season, the playoffs, when like, oh my god, they've got them on like lockdown defense right now. So it's wild to see what's happening. And I can't wait. And I'm probably going to go watch the games tonight afterwards, after I finish cooking and all that kind of stuff, after I go off stream. But that's likely what's going to be happening right now. You know, I forgot to change the thing in the bottom. Celiac Disease in Sport. I forgot to change the thing at the bottom. My bad. Like I said, I'm not having the most attentive day right now, so you'll have to excuse me. Plus, my hair's looking a little bit busted. Didn't get a chance to do it before stream. This is still like me having slept in my hair. I will say one thing about my hair is that it has been, this is the longest it's ever been, and I get a lot of the decisions that women with long hair have to make now. I get how difficult it is, and it is nuts. So yeah, it's kind of fun to see like, okay, I got to do my hair this way. This is the easiest, and factoring in hair as a decision-making process in regards to my overall day has been pretty wild, I will say. I'm loving it, but it is something that gives me a lot more empathy. or understanding. Not sure if empathy is the right word, but a lot of understanding towards that issue. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. My hair's looking a little bit busted. So if you can all forgive that right now, that'd be swell. That'd be really, really swell. All right, so we got these vegetables cut up, and then we're gonna do the red bell pepper. And again, I think this is just more for flavor, but like, you know, we're still talking about nutrition at the end of the day, right? So we're still gonna do nutrition things with them, like cook them, but for the most part, you're not gonna see a lot of bell peppers in here. And because one of the biggest things too is climate is very, very important. You'll see that, and this is why I have this debate with people a lot, that like a ton of fresh fruits and vegetables are not entirely necessary. Don't get me wrong, they're not. They are important, but if you look at cultures around the world that are further north of the equator, like Korea and like Russia and all that kind of stuff, you kind of see what their diet is composed of and how little fresh fruits and vegetables are available within that cuisine. And so, you know, it's not that it's not important. It's just that we understand if there's a if you're de-emphasizing the importance of the fruits and vegetables and all that kind of stuff. So, it might be a little bit controversial, but you know your boy. You know how he operates. I thrive off controversy. Get it. Okay. So back to talking about celiac disease and all that kind of stuff. So, like I said before, the stats are... Hold on, let me just wash these real quick because you're probably having a hard time hearing me. Okay. So, like I said, athletes with celiac disease typically are 4 times more sensitive to any kind of flare-up, any kind of issue and all that kind of stuff. And that's, you know, it sucks because it's not fun, because it really, really pulls away from your athleticism when your digestive system isn't working properly or you're having a flare-up kind of moment, right? So whenever you have flare-up moments, the strategies I've talked with my athletes about is what kind of safe, fast foods can we get you to eat reliably after you have an accidental whoopsie moment, because you know, that would cause a flare-up. Because flare-ups happen, you know, that's what celiac is. So it's about, okay, making sure you have a backup plan to recover from that, and how you can, you know, go gluten-free again really, really quickly and minimize those symptoms. So JAPCHAE could be one of those recipes. It's more likely to be, you're more successful to have like anything within your culture, and that's what I will always emphasize. But like, this is why I will be like, hey, what's a potato dish that you can have that doesn't have flour in it? You know, like mashed potatoes or like roasted potatoes or baked potatoes, right? Not having any gluten in them makes it a lot easier to follow and get back on track, right? Because the moment you have a flare-up, it sucks. It sucks for people. Like, they just have the worst digestive issues and all that kind of stuff. And that can really throw you off in a sports environment, right? So we want to make sure that you have a backup plan to go to when you are experiencing any kind of digestive flare-up in relation to celiac disease. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put the vegetables on this tray that I've got prepped up, my mise en place in French culinary terms, which is everything, you know, in its place. And, you know, we're just going to make it easy for transfer. And plus, these are like really kind of pretty. I got them from Costco. Very excited to use them. I am definitely at that age where I will talk about Costco and like hound Costco kind of deals and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of cool. So no sponsorship deal from Costco yet. But like I said, I am only going to make brand deals with stuff that doesn't affect my messaging. So no supplement companies or anything like that. But if Costco wants to sponsor me, hit me up in the DMs. That's what I'll say. All right. So what I'm going to do now is start boiling some water because the spinach part of the dish needs to be blanched really, really quickly and then iced and then strained before the vegetables and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is start boiling the water, which the noodles are also going to go into, so that when we mix everything together, it works out really, really good. So water in thing, up top, gonna start boiling. So, like I said, celiac disease in sport. One of the lucky things about a lot of sports supplements is they don't have wheat in them, so it's kind of like a lot of products are safe. And when I say that, I mean like protein powders and creatine and Gatorade and sports drinks and stuff like that. They don't have gluten in them. What does have gluten in them is a lot of like the regular multivitamins and all that kind of stuff, because they could have wheat as a binder for like the pills that they make, those dry pills. So you want to be careful and definitely get used to reading the labels. That's one thing I tell people a lot, is how to actually read labels when it comes to celiac disease, right? Because the better you know, the better everything's going to be for your digestive health. So celiac disease in sport. One of the biggest things is we want to be aware of how celiac disease will change everything. And it depends on the level of severity of how well controlled you are or how poorly controlled you are with celiac disease. Because if you're well controlled, there's no real problem, to be perfectly honest. You're just managing really, really well. You're avoiding gluten. Gluten's the enemy. Cool. We're good with that, right? But let's say there is a whoopsie moment, because there always is a whoopsie moment, right? Whether or not you're dining out, whether or not the people at the restaurant or the food establishment know intimately the ingredient lists and all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, sometimes, especially like you could have a dish prepared that's like, yeah, there's no wheat in it, but there's wheat in the sauce. Like, for example, oyster sauce, which is like one of my favorite things in the world, has wheat in it. So that would suck to be like, oh, okay, we're at a Chinese restaurant, New Ho King, boom. For if you know, you know. And you order something, let's say beef ngao yok ho fan, which is beef ho fan, which is rice noodles cooked with beef, but you know that doesn't have wheat in any of those ingredients. But because there's wheat in the oyster sauce, that could set someone off with celiac disease. So you want to be careful with those kind of things, right? That's where the challenge is. Let's say you have a whoopsie moment because you were experimenting and all that kind of stuff with food, which I highly encourage people to do, so that they know more about food. And let's say that's before like a tournament or something like that. Well, crap, no pun intended. What we would be doing at that point in time is making sure that you have a safe diet to go back to immediately. Like, you know that there are certain foods within your specific culture and cuisine that you can reliably cook that are actively gluten-free, and you go there right away, right? Like I was saying, a lot of rice-based dishes now enter the picture, potato-based dishes enter the picture, and stuff like that, right? So, because the goal there is, if you do have a whoopsie moment with gluten-free, with celiac disease, I should say, you just need to continue avoid gluten and allow your body to heal itself back up. Because, of course, like, you know, that's a great thing about the body, is that it does a really, really good job of healing itself, as long as we don't continue to introduce those products that cause insult into the digestive system. But let's say your celiac disease is poorly managed. Let's say you don't know how to manage your celiac disease. You didn't get diagnosed properly yet, or I've seen some people in celiac disease denial. What that would look like at that point is that the worse it is, no longer it's the symptoms have been going on for, the smoother the intestinal tract is, which cause nutritional deficiencies, right? The nutritional deficiencies affect everything, but there are certain micronutrients that are of bigger importance compared to everything else. Now, the challenge is a digestive system that's constantly inflamed doesn't work properly. It doesn't absorb everything properly, right? So you could be on paper theoretically hitting all your macros and all your micronutrients, but you might be absorbing 50% of them, depending on how bad the symptoms are of your celiac disease and how much gluten is you're regularly dealing with, right? So one thing I say to people all the time, just because you're eating theoretically, let's say 2,000 calories, doesn't mean you're always absorbing 2,000 calories, right? And then if your digestive system is constantly inflamed, what does that mean? Well, it means that you're going to have micronutrient deficiencies. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But for the most part, it means that you're going to just have nutrition absorption issues. And when your body is in constant states of inflammation, what fundamentally happens is that your body is losing protein. The reason why is because the body fights inflammation using a substance called glutamine. Glutamine is an amino acid. Amino acids make up proteins. So what ends up happening is if you're, for example, celiac, and constantly having gluten in your diet, what happens is the level of inflammation rises so much that you're losing so much lean muscle mass that it puts you into what we call starvation mode, for lack of a better term, and the body prioritizes from a hormonal perspective weight gain because it's in survival mode. Weight gain being a fat content, not muscle content, right? So that's where a lot of people have some serious dramatic health shifts, is because their gluten intolerance and their celiac disease is so poorly managed that their body, even though they're eating the right amount of calories and all that kind of stuff, it's the fact that their body is telling them what to do with the nutrition that they're actually able to absorb. So you cannot assume that just because you're eating perfectly according to your tracking app and all that kind of stuff, that your body is doing everything that it needs to do in order to get you there, so to speak, right? So keep that in mind always, because it's just such a challenge explaining that to people, is that because there's always the assumption that I ate 2,000 calories, therefore I absorbed 2,000 calories. I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't. If you can absorb those 2,000 calories and think that it's going towards muscle building and what your body naturally does, but really your body's putting into fat retention and fat gain, because it's like, hey, you're starving and we need to make sure you survive long term. And surviving long term for the body means decreasing lean muscle mass and increasing fat mass, which is typically, generally speaking, not good at all for the general population. But it's even worse in athletes, because now, on top of the digestive issues, we're having muscle recovery issues, right? We're having feeling issues. We're having fatigue. We're having like muscle loss, even though someone's very active. And that combination of all those factors together eventually leads to injury, which is important considering some of the specific micronutrients that, are really greatly impacted by celiac and flare-ups, and from an absorption issue if things aren't not properly controlled. Now, let's say you're really good at gluten control and avoiding gluten from celiac disease standpoint. There's literally nothing that your body's doing differently at that point. It's just functioning well. It's functioning normally, right? So that's the ultimate goal, is like, how far away can we stay from this? So I will say to athletes, like, depending on what their competition schedule is looking like, when they have to play, when they have to practice and all that kind of stuff, it's better to have specific dishes, specific recipes that you yourself know are fundamentally safe. So you always want to aim for those kind of things to reduce as many variables as possible when it comes to your sport, because you don't want those kind of issues, especially, and I'm not saying that you should loosen up during the off season too, because like during off season is where champions are built, in the sense where there's a lot of work that goes into an athlete's training schedule in the off season, where they're building a lot of lean muscle mass, recovering from the competitive season, working on the goals towards the next season. So it's generally good to know what is the safest nutrition plan and dishes and recipes that you can have in order to get there. Now, if you're someone that doesn't know how to cook very much, I'm glad you're here, because along with teaching you about nutrition and health, I'm here to teach you how to cook as well, right? So I'm glad you're here. Hopefully some of these recipes that I cook will be beneficial and helpful to you in the long term, and something that you can keep in mind and practice yourself and see how I do, and then hopefully that transfers. But for the most part, it's all about making sure that if you don't know how to cook that well, what kind of strategies can we employ that are still fundamentally safe? So like instant rice packets that you can have, like Uncle Ben's, basically. Which ones of those packets are safe that you can microwave and heat? What kind of dishes are safe that are convenient for you? Like, your boy, he loves Costco, and is that rotisserie chicken, does it have any wheat on it in the seasoning and all that kind of stuff, right? Because if it doesn't, then buying a few of those allows you to reheat in good faith. If you're someone that likes to eat salad, what kind of salad dressings are gluten-free? Because a lot of them actually have wheat in them as stabilizing agents. Now, if you're like, okay, I'm eating salad, I just do the olive oil, balsamic vinegar kind of thing, sure, whatever, that kind of works too. But for the most part, I don't see that many people eating that much salad on repeat to that level of frequency, right? Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. And hold on one second. I don't even know if balsamic has wheat in it. Let me check. Balsamic vinegar. All right, here we go. Balsamic. Yeah, it looks good. Balsamic looks to be a gluten-free product. So, cool. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, if you're doing that, that's relatively safe. But just have dishes that you know that are safe for everything that you're currently doing. If you want to experiment with foods, do your research first. Ask the chef, ask all those people, is there gluten in this? And if they say no and you're experiencing a symptom, then they didn't know enough. You know your body better than anyone else. If you're having a symptom related to gluten intolerance and celiac disease, and it flares up when someone says, no, there's no gluten in this, there was gluten in it. They just didn't know where the gluten was, right? That, it is what it is. So, you mess with that. The water is boiling. We're preparing the stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of what it's looking like. We might as well start stir frying some of the vegetables. So I'm going to get us switched over to that side of the kitchen. And yeah, let's go. So just going to turn that on real quick, and I'm going to move you over here, chat. And my microphone, which really, really helps pick up the audio and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're on the other side of the kitchen right now. We're about to stir fry the vegetables and basically, hopefully, start blanching some of the spinach, and we're going to start mixing everything up. So that is celiac disease in sports. So I'm going to go to the next session that I have that is, that I prepared. Again, not a gluten free or celiac disease specialist. Just tell them about the things that I normally see. Now, in terms of micronutrients, a couple that are very, very important are iron, vitamin D, and calcium. So the challenge with people with celiac disease is long-term, do they have bone health issues? And that's a big thing to consider, largely because athletes need strong bones in order to do what they need to do, right? That's the most important thing. So if athletes have weak bones because their celiac disease is poorly managed, then they might experience a break at some point, and that is no bueno. That is no bueno whatsoever. Sweet, we got it boiling. So we want to consider those three things: iron, calcium, and vitamin D. So all of which could be supplemented very, very well, but we ideally just want to avoid wheat and gluten in order to do that. So right now I am going to blanch the spinach and really quickly in this boiling water before I use the same boiling water for the potato noodles. Now, what I've done here is I've gotten a bowl of water with ice in it, and what I'm going to do is just throw the spinach in there real quick, and then I'm going to transfer it into the bowl because I want it to stop cooking immediately and then be able to strain it out. So it's going to take a generous amount of this spinach, this baby spinach, throw it in, let it blanch real quick, and you know, that way we're also retaining as many nutrients as possible. Throw that in there. We have the spinach that went in. That. Okay. That's really as long as it really needs to be. It's like a quick, how do you do? Get it in there, blanch it real quick, make sure everything's good, and then get it out as soon as possible. So that's looking good already. I'm going to pull it out, strain it a little bit, throw it in the ice water so it immediately stops cooking. And once it's cooled down, we're going to squeeze the water out, the excess water out, and basically that is done until the final dish is ready. There we go. So I love this dish, not only because of how good the noodle texture is, but like because there's so many vegetables in here. And it's so colorful, it's so delicious, that it works really, really well. So, you know, for those of you that are like, hey, how do I cook my spinach and all that kind of stuff? This is one of those ways. You can definitely do that. All right, so spinach is done. Going to put this lid back on and turn this off real quick because I don't need it boiling as aggressively. I'm just going to turn it down actually. And then while I start cooking up and tossing some of the actual vegetables here. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do it. I've seen videos where people are like separating the cooking process for each and every vegetable. I'm not going to do that. Not going to do that. Largely because ain't nobody got time for that. I'm trying to show you a fast, easy way of doing this. So what I'm going to do is cook these in stages, because one thing that you need to know is why I'm doing certain things the way I'm doing. So in terms of the mushrooms are going in here to the pan dry, right? And when I mean dry, I mean not with oil. The reason why is because I don't want the mushrooms to absorb all that oil the same, like, because the other vegetables won't do that, but the mushrooms will. I will say I'm using baby portobellas, porcinis, but traditionally this is a shiitake mushroom recipe. Now, the reason why I'm not using shiitake mushrooms is your boy has ADHD and forgot to soak them properly enough. So this is how I'm soaking them. The dried shiitake mushrooms, because I love dried shiitake mushrooms. I think they're the most flavorful, but we'll use this for a different day. Getting back to this though, I'm just going to cook these up without any kind of oil in the pan so that it can basically cook down without absorbing too much oil. So you just got to keep it moving. And what's going to happen is it's going to start sweating out a lot of the extra liquid in the mushroom, which is exactly what we want to do. It doesn't take too long, so you got to have something to put the vegetables into immediately to transfer once it's done cooking. And I got more of these, so I'm just going to use another one of those. Okay, sweet. See, it's already kind of done. The mushrooms. There we go. That's what they look like. And, alright, so I'm just going to put this in here. The mushrooms are done. Do not need that much cooking. But what we're going to do next is put some oil in and then cook the other stuff all at once. Now, I am using olive oil. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to use like a neutral oil, like vegetable oil or canola oil or something like that. Something that doesn't add a whole lot of flavors in. I don't have any of that right now. So I'm just using what I got. And sure, you can go, oh, the health benefits of olive oil are better and all that kind of stuff. Also, yes. But remember, olives in Asian cuisine, it's not it. So this is going to taste a little bit different. But like I said, I'm not Korean. Don't hold me to any of this. Just have a little bit more in there. And we're going to cook the rest of the vegetables. And then I'm going to start blanching and cooking the noodles. The noodles. Definitely. Okay. So the spinach is cooled down. I'm just going to drain it right now. So what I'm doing is just gathering them all into basically a fistful of lettuce, spinach like this. And then I'm going to strain out the extra liquid because I don't want that much liquid in there. I'm not going to like strangle the crap out of it because I do want some of the nutrients still retained in there. But, you know, it is what it is. I don't want too much liquid. I don't want to also like strain it all out too, so keep that in mind. So we got now the vegetables. So now oil's nice and ready. All right, we're going to put in the rest of the vegetables in to stir fry them up. So while this is going, we're going to remember that we still got the actual meat here. The reason why we're doing this toward the end is so that we can do it all in one pan without kind of making everything too crazy. So, in terms of flavor, I don't want the vegetables to get too much of the flavor of the meat because it just retains it a little bit easier. It's all going to get tossed together in the end anyways, but like, you know, this is just I'm trying to be at least a little bit accurate to the Korean videos that I've watched that teach me how to do this. Shout out to Sok Yun Long Guest, I think is her name. She's one of the OGs on YouTube from a cooking standpoint, especially Asian culinary stuff. Love her videos, would love to collab one day. But, you know, she's a queen. And I'm just like a peasant boy that's cooking on YouTube talking about nutrition. But that's it. That's what I'm doing right now. So, what is this? Cooking this up. So, you're not looking to cook it up all the way. This is a quick stir fry and all that kind of stuff. You're not looking to cook everything through. We're not looking to turn this into mush. We definitely want some of the bite qualities there because, again, Asian food is all about texture and texture variation within the dish, right? So if this was mushy, then the dish is not going to be quite as good. So we're just going to pan fry this up a little bit, making sure it retains a lot of its al dente-ness of the actual vegetable. That looks good. And then now we're going to get into the meat of it all. No pun, but just throwing that there. So let's say here. All right, beautiful. So we have all these vegetables that are ready to go into our JAPCHAE, which I cannot wait for. Okay. Getting into common nutrient deficiencies, the micronutrients, anyways, again, are the iron, vitamin D, and calcium. So it is generally, I recommend that people with celiac disease, especially celiac athletes, to have a higher protein diet in general. That's just for good sports nutrition advice, generally speaking, but also because it's going to be a lot easier to make sure that you have your iron stores well stocked up before anything really happens from a flare-up standpoint, right? We want to stock that all up. Throwing that in. We'll let that cook through. Put this away. Okay. So while all that meat's cooking up, I am going to turn the heat back up on my water. I'm probably going to add a little bit more water back in because it lost a little bit while it was originally boiling. No, actually it's still good. And I'm going to get ready for my potato starch noodles. So yeah, those micronutrients, iron, calcium, vitamin D, supplement those. For vitamin D, you want to find cholecalciferol, which is vitamin D3, the activated form. And generally speaking, for vitamin D recommendations, if you're an adult, I generally recommend adults get 2,000 international units per day minimum. Wouldn't go so high as to 5,000. Some people have, but that's usually with like medical following and like all that kind of stuff. One of the biggest truths about nutrition is, like, from a vitamin D standpoint, we actually don't know how much to fully recommend, and because the research was done really, really poorly on it. Like, don't know who the original researchers were, but like that was you guys dropping the ball. That was you guys really dropping the ball on that, because there were so many statistical errors with that original research with like the RDAs and the ERIs about vitamin D, that basically whenever dietitians recommend the vitamin D content now, we're just way above what the old research was, right? And that's because the old research was bad, and they haven't done newer research that fully is confident to be like, this is what the recommended daily allowance is, or the DRIs, or whatever the hell those things are. But again, the challenge is people eat food, they do not eat nutrients, right? So in regards to these specific nutrients, that's why I recommend people get the supplementation in. Now, in regards to the supplementation, not only is it important to kind of look at these supplements, but really, again, like I said before, making sure that the supplement brand you have doesn't have like hidden wheat in that. So, keep that in mind. So, we're using our potato noodles now. I'm just going to add it in. Add in a good, healthy amount and let that cook. Now, to be perfectly honest, based on, do I want to do the full bag? Okay, let's not do the full bag. I'll do that later. But I definitely want to let that cook down. This is my one drawer where like everything kind of goes into. What's up? We got 3 viewers watching right now. That's awesome. I appreciate you very, very much. Say hi in chat if you want to. If you're shy, I get it. But, it's always cool to say hi to people. I want to interact with you and make sure that you're getting a good experience out of this, that everything's going well for you, and just, saying hi, saying what's up, that kind of thing. So I'm just cooking down the noodles right now. the meat's cooking, so we're gonna throw that together in a little bit. Once the meat's fully done and safe to eat, because it is pork, we want to cook it properly, especially ground pork. Like, the greater surface area a meat has, the greater potential there is for like disease and like all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is, now that the bottom is nice and browned and there's still a little bit rawness to it, like, I don't know if you could see that, there's still some pink, that's what I would say is like roughly probably 75% cooked. And what I'm going to do now is just cover it a little bit so that it can better absorb, better use its own steam to actually cook the pork and all that kind of stuff. So I love this pan. It's got this lid. Just going to do one of those. Awesome. Now, the noodles are cooking. These noodles don't take too long to be ready. And the reason why I like them is because they're not like, they are gluten-free noodles, but they're not gluten-free in the sense where they go soggy the same way that they would, right? Cook until desired. Damn it! It doesn't say what to do there. Whatever. Okay. It is what it is, fellas and ladies and gentlemen and all that kind of stuff. We're just gonna cook it until it's roughly done. I'm gonna say about like probably 5 minutes. Haven't made this dish in a while, so don't fully trust me on that quote. I'm just separating them right now in the water, making sure it's all good. Because we're going to put it all together toward the end and make sure it tastes, it's tasty. Make sure it's really, really tasty. So, any questions about celiac disease in sport right now, feel free to hit me up in the chat. I will answer anything that you possibly can. But if not, we're just going to go into gluten-free strategies, right? And here's the fun thing. Ah, crap. No! There we go. Fixed it. The one thing about gluten-free strategies, like I said to people all the time, people with digestive issues always need to be in tune with what their body is telling them, right? You have to be really, really, really in tune, because if your digestive system goes wrong, a lot of other stuff starts going wrong. So you definitely want to know, A, what your good body feels like, in regards to, are you having flare-ups? If everything's going good right now, you want to recognize that as baseline, right? There's far too many people I know that when I do the assessment, they're like, oh, this is my baseline, and they're actually having some symptoms. You don't want to normalize the symptoms, right? Because that's just like a tolerance issue that you're going to lose over time. You're just going to lose that battle 9 times out of 10. You're not built different. You need to recognize that. So keep that in mind. So, okay, so you see how the steam just like really, really just cooked everything really, really through. So the pork isn't going to be overcooked, but it's going to be fully cooked, right? Okay. So that's what we're going to do. Everything's looking good. There's no pink left. I'm breaking apart the big chunks. Awesome. Everything's looking good in this department. Beautiful. So I'm going to turn this off, and then the noodles are done. Yeah, the noodles are done. Okay. So I'm going to turn that off too, and I'm just going to do one of these. Take a strainer and put it in. Now, I do want the noodles to cool down just a little bit before serving, because it's going to be friggin' hot. I don't want to deal with like really scorching hot noodles, because I have to mix it up, right? Now, you can mix it up by hand, or you can mix it up by tongs. Depends how hardcore you are and how cold this is, but I'm just going to let it cool down a little bit, and we're going to make sure it's good. Now, one pro tip is sprinkle a little bit of sesame oil on it immediately while it comes out. Kind of like how you would put olive oil on pasta once it comes out of the pan. And that's going to give it more flavor, but make sure that it, like, while it cools, it doesn't stick together, right? So just toss a little bit of olive oil in, and it'll be really, really good. Awesome. Okay, so this is cooling down a little bit. The meat's done. That's cooling down a little bit. So I'm going to bring you over to the other side because we're going to start mixing a big bowl of this stuff and making sure I can eat dinner pretty soon. Because your boy's hungry. Been working a long day. I'm going to pull you back to the other side. Do 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 do. Ta-da. You're on the other side of the kitchen now. All right. So that is done. What we're going to do now is take a clean mixing bowl, and we're going to start going to add some of the noodles in and some of the sauce. Now the sauce is just a little bit more tamari with sugar and sesame oil. That's why I love this recipe, because it's so simple. It really, really is so simple, but it's so delicious. So we're just going to add that much in. Seems like a lot, but you'll see what happens when we just start mixing it in. Sesame oil. Just going to finish that off. There's very little left in there. I know I do have another thing of sesame oil. I got to find it, but that's all I really need. Sesame oil is one of those things that's powerful, packs a lot of punch. A lot of punch. So we want to keep that in mind. Here we go. Sesame seeds. We want to throw this in. There's more sesame flavor. Love the sesame. Love the sesame. And sugar. Just gonna mix that up real quick. Okay, that is our sauce. It's ready to go. It is ready to go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is bring over the noodles that are fully cooked. I'm just going to add it into this bowl. And yeah, there we go. Fully cooked noodles. It's going in the bowl. Looking twit. Yeah. All right. So here's the trick, because I think I do have too many ingredients in the sense where I have too many vegetables and too much protein. So we're just going to add it in slowly, but first we're just going to add some of the sauce that we just mixed up in here real quick, and we're just going to toss that around. We're going to mix it up so, you know, it doesn't stick together and all that kind of stuff. It gets a lot of flavor, and then afterwards we're going to throw the vegetables in. And the protein, the meat that's on the stove right now. So we have that. Boom. Looking delicious. And then we're just going to add, I'm going to say like half these vegetables in. And then the rest, I have the rest of that package of potato noodles. Potato starch noodles, so I'm just going to add that in eventually once I cook it up off stream and all that kind of stuff, probably for another meal later this weekend, and switch this up. Now, I will say one thing too. There's supposed to be egg in this. I didn't do that just because I think it would be just like, you know, a bit. I just got lazy. But there's supposed to be egg in it. There's supposed to be egg in it. A little bit of fried egg, a little bit of color differentiation, all that kind of stuff. But look at that already. Look at how colorful that is. Ton of vegetables in this nice dish that can be served cold. And now we're going to add the protein in. So getting the protein, throw that in. And then sorry, that's probably not the best angle, but you know, whatever. Okay. So that is our JAPCHAE. We're just going to mix that all up. Make sure everything's groovy and that everything is working out really, really well. Let it sit a little bit of time to let the flavors get together. Let everything marinate really, really well. The flavors all come together toward the end. All that good stuff. And yeah. So anyways, that's basically a lot of what I have about gluten-free strategies. Like, whenever you do have, it's not about knowing, I don't think, personally speaking, because I think it's easy to avoid gluten for the most part once you start to get to know everything. But the challenge is that ultimately you're operating from a place of fear, right? Operating from a place of fear is not what I like to encourage my athletes and my clients to do, because you're not really empowered. You're just afraid of things, and you just, I won't eat that, I won't eat that, I won't eat that. Yes, it's safe, but you miss out on so much life experience, right? You miss on so much delicious foods. So I don't encourage that. I do encourage that safety if, like, for example, you've been like not having good gluten control your whole life, and you just need to be sane a little bit and not afraid of food anymore, sure. But I'm like, okay, how long are we doing the safety thing for, right? How long are we prioritizing the safety thing of your nutrition plan? Because at a certain point in time, the safety just becomes restrictive, right? Nobody wants that. I don't want that. I want my clients to be able to eat well and have a good time and enjoy their food. And true empowerment's about education, right? So educating yourself on what foods have gluten in them, what don't, but more importantly, if you accidentally have an accident, because let's be honest, it's gonna happen. Like, no matter what, you're gonna experience some gluten in your lifetime if you're celiac. It doesn't matter how good you are at reading labels, doesn't matter all that kind of stuff. Just someone else will mess up, and if that ever happens, what you need to know is how to get back on track. So what dishes you need to cook in order to make sure your digestive system gets back on track, aka a hardcore gluten-free diet. And you know, it's best to, especially for athletes, the closer you are to competition, the more strict you have to be with following that diet, because we want to reduce the variables that would affect you on your competition days and all that kind of stuff, right? So the closer you get to competition, the more strict you need to be with your gluten-free-ness of celiac disease. But let's say it's immediately after competition, you're celebrating, the team's out going for, like, you know, some foods and all that kind of stuff. Then of course make sure you have a little bit more of the fun aspect of everything. Experiment. But really, it's not just about celiac disease management, at least to me, is not always just about what foods I need to avoid. It's what foods are safe for me as well, and what works with my nutrition plan very, very well, right? So always keep that in mind. It's not just my dishes. Being gluten-free or celiac is not all about just restrictive mindsets and restricting your food. It's all about just knowing what foods are safe for you and all that kind of stuff, and how to read labels. So it's if you do have an accident and you have gluten in your nutrition plan and your diet and all that kind of stuff by accident, it's knowing how to recover, how to get back on the horse, how to prevent yourself from getting worse from a digestive health standpoint, and basically preventing the damage from setting in with your digestive tract, right? I hope that makes sense. I've had a great time tonight cooking. Like I said, I'm not feeling my greatest self today, so I'm probably going to wrap it up pretty soon unless I see some questions in chat. I do appreciate the 3 people that are just constantly here. You're just like the coolest people ever. I hope to bump up those numbers. So if you can tell your friends about this, like, share, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, that'd be swell. But right now, I'm just going to plate this thing up. And oh my God, look how good that is. And I'm eating this out of a bowl. And like, I'm working on a video right now that talks about bowls versus plates. So stay tuned for that. But right now, I'm just going to throw this into a bowl. And plate up the rest of this dish. You know, and depending on the proteins you have, sometimes it mixes better with the noodles, and sometimes it doesn't. This time it doesn't mix so well because it's a ground meat, but at the same time, I'm very happy with it. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my garden real quick. So I'm going to go off camera, and I'm going to get some green onions because I want to make sure that it looks pretty. And I like the taste of green onions too, to be perfectly honest. So that's what we're doing there. This is just going to stay here. It's just going to marinate some more, and it's going to be probably dinner for tomorrow night or lunch for tomorrow night. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to get the stuff. All right, so this is the fresh green onion coming from my garden. Just gonna wash that real quick. If you want anyone to think that you're good at cooking, just chop up some green onion and throw it on at the very, very end as a presentation piece. Boom. Color, it's delicious, it's beautiful. And it tastes really good. Chat, look at that. Look at that, chat. Like, isn't that pretty? I'm so excited for this. I've been craving this for so long. Chopsticks only. And one of the biggest things, like I said, like, it's Asian Heritage Month, and it's also Celiac Awareness Month, and that's just one of those things that works really, really well together, because there's a lot of Asian dishes out there for everyone to try that are really just gluten-free without needing gluten-free ingredients. Again, I said this at the beginning of my stream, but it's always easier to go gluten-free and to have fun eating gluten-free when the dishes aren't making too many substitutions for the ingredients, right? So, for example, in the beginning of the stream, I was talking about gluten-free breads and how that is, not my favorite. And I was having drinks with someone last night, and they were telling me about how bread is like their favorite thing. They love bread. Their life is bread and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I don't care about bread. I just don't. It wasn't a big part of my childhood, not a big part of my adulthood. And unless bread is serving a function, like a sandwich, I don't care about it. But in a sandwich, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty legit. It's pretty awesome, right? But that's because of the texture contrast that I have, that I like, that specifically with my food. But bread in general, don't really care that much about, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'm not everybody, so don't let that get in your way. But I do genuinely believe that's a lot easier to be gluten-free if your ingredients already are, Sorry, I got to take one for the gram to tease everyone and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's generally a lot easier to be gluten-free if you are eating a dish that does not have many, very, very many substitutions. Like, if your main ingredient is being substituted, then it's just not going to be the same. It just doesn't, it hits differently. It's got a different vibe altogether. Like I said, the best example is like rice noodles with a pasta dish. That ain't it. That is not it. It sucks. I had an ex and she was wonderful. She's a wonderful person. She was Italian, and I figured out through the relationship that she had gluten intolerance, and she hated me for that. Even though, and this is why I say science ruins everyone's fun. It ruins everyone's fun. But did she have a better time digesting food when she stayed away from gluten? Absolutely yes. Did that mean that she couldn't have a lot of the foods that were inherently a part of her culture? Also, yes, like pastas and all that kind of stuff. But then I was like, hey, risotto is a part of your culture. This is part of all this kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, going gluten-free is easy when you're eating risotto from Italian dishes, right? Really, really easy. And you don't hate it because it's just like, you know what pasta is supposed to be, and gluten-free pasta just doesn't cut it. It just really, really doesn't. So try to find whatever culture you're a part of. Try to find the dishes that naturally just don't have gluten in them as an ingredient or from sauces or anything like that, and stick to those as your safe ones, right? And it's not to say that there's not good gluten-free products out there like gluten-free pastas or gluten-free breads. I just find that they're really, really expensive, and I am not about that right now. I'm more about making sure that everyone has food that they can access that is good, that's tasty, and affordable. Because right now it is nuts out there. It really, really is. So I'm gonna shut up just for a little bit just to eat this on camera. I'm not gonna eat the whole thing, but I'm gonna eat this so that this dish just hits so good. The springiness of the noodles, the freshness of all the vegetables, it's so good. And it's so easy to make. You can use the versatility of it. Like, you can definitely use tofu instead of pork, which is what I use today. Traditionally, I will say the best version of this is with beef. But I didn't get any beef today. I had pork in my fridge, and I needed to use it, so here we are. So that's today's video, that's today's episode, that's today's stream. Again, all throughout this month, it's Asian Heritage Month. I will be cooking Asian dishes exclusively to celebrate my Asian heritage, my Chinese heritage, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to try to push out more gluten-free recipes out there for you, or dishes. Next week, yeah, I'm gonna cook pad thai next week. One of my favorite dishes of all time. We're gonna do that gluten-free, and it's gonna be delicious. So come on by. I don't know what the theme is gonna be yet, like what kind of sports nutrition theme I'm gonna talk about, but I do know I'm gonna cook pad thai. So that's a little bit of a spoiler for the 3 people that are watching right now. Thank you so much for being here. I love you all. Hopefully these numbers grow, so please like, subscribe, share, do your thing, and who knows, do you want to see a roadmap? Do you want to see like an event schedule, like which themes I'm going to do next, at which dates, and all that kind of stuff? Let me know in the comments below. But right now, I'm just going to start cleaning up. I'm going to go off stream now, going to watch some sports, going to watch some basketball, maybe play some video games. Who knows? I need some time to myself. Definitely finish up my client reports, my paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna get those emailed out to my clients. So either way, like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for coming by episode 4 of this streaming experiment that I'm doing. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for coming by. Cannot stress that enough again. And I'll see you next week. Cheers.